City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded March 1st, 2021.
And we have 6:01, so I will call the meeting of the Stevens Point Plan Commission to order. Director Konoski, could you get a roll call, please?
Weeza.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Haynes is excused. Hoppy.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum, so we will continue. Item number 2 is the report of the January 4th, 2021 meeting of the City Plan Commission. Those minutes and actions were included in your packet.
Mayor, my apologies. I forgot Alder Nabone.
Oh, I sorry about that.
I just assumed that you marked me here because we were chatting right around 6 o'clock. So I am here.
Very true. Okay, so again, the report of the City Plan Commission meeting from January 4th. Commissioners, are there any changes, modifications that we need to consider?
Mr. Mayor, this is Cooper. I will move approval of those minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Hoppy will second.
Thank you. And thank you, commissioners, for identifying yourselves. Trying to get everybody, I can only view 4 people at a time, so it's challenging to get through. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes and actions from our January 4th meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves, and if you're in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that is approved. Item number 3 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point for a conditional use permit to construct a fire department training site at 3100 Whiting Avenue, consistent with Chapter 23.02 sub 1 sub A sub 3 sub A of the revised municipal code. Director Konoski, would you care to give us an overview? Or
I'll defer that to the planner.
okay, Adam.
All right, so this proposal here tonight has been in the works for several months now between the city's fire department and other applicable parties to utilize the property at 3100 Whiting Avenue for a training site for fire-related purposes. So on the screen here, you can see the different types of uses that would occur on the property: a classroom and storage building, fixed concrete burn cells, fixed roof props, all the way down to a burn tower and associated parking space. Now, this will be a phased project, roughly planned on 3 to 10 years, but of course that'll be dependent on funding. And as some folks here in the audience do recall, a few weeks ago, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the Police and Fire Commission and Mid-State Technical College to promote regional fire training with different agencies regionally. And then the purpose for this conditional use request is that any instructional activities, in this case as well, requiring the construction of structures, do require a conditional use permit since this property is located within the Conservancy District. So here is a site plan that again was included in your site plan, in your packet rather. So you can see north is pointed towards the right-hand portion of your screen. So you can see Whiting Avenue, and the entrance will be located as is normally for the city pit, with a second, with a sliding gate, I should say, for the entrance to the fire department training site. So you can see here, right when you enter will be the parking lot with the classroom and storage building, the access road ultimately leading to a second parking area on the northern half of the lot with various fire props, the splash tower, Connex building, confined space, trenches, clap and rescue facilities located throughout. So I guess some special topics to know as far as the site plan is concerned. So there is an existing fire hydrant located on where my cursor is right now. In addition to that, there is a proposed fire hydrant located here and a dry hydrant located just west of where the proposed fencing will be. And then just to give an overview too, as far as what types of improvements will need to occur on the site prior to any structures or activities to occur. So first of all, that the site here rather, will need to be graded, again, in order for any improvements to occur. Now, a stormwater retention pond is proposed as part of the overall stormwater plan submittal, which will be reviewed by the utilities department prior to its construction. And one thing that was made of note during the staff review, and it's noted in the staff report as well, is that some adverse impacts on the surrounding properties may exist during these training exercises. So the example was given as any smoke that would be produced during any training, during any training practices. So likewise, while our nuisance ordinance in the city doesn't specifically outline, when specific hours as to when noise should be diminished or cease, that's something that, the plan commission, if they so seek fit to establish specific time restrictions for when specific uses can occur on the property. I mean, that would be a worthwhile conversation to have. And I do know that a representative from the city's fire department is here that can answer any questions as it relates to that as well. So again, some site photos showing, I know the snow is a little bit deceiving as far as the exact location, but you can see here is where the existing gate is. And then the fire department training site here will be located on the eastern side of the lot, running parallel with Whiting Avenue. So overall, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use request subject to the conditions shown on your screen, that a parking lot layout plan shall be approved and reviewed by staff. Stormwater management plan and erosion control permit shall be filed and approved by staff. All fire hydrants located on the site shall be equipped with backfill prevention, making sure that there's access to the fire sprinkler system on the site. Any proposed fencing meeting specific city guidelines, and then the last two, a building permit being issued, and then staff having the authority to approve minor changes.
Thank you. Commissioners, any clarifying questions from our city planner before we open up the public hearing?
Mayor Alder
Yes.
Nebone here. I have a quick question. Would there be any concern at all about runoff into some of the wetlands? I guess that would be to the west. It doesn't look like they would be affected, but just in case.
Yeah, so that was a discussion during the staff meeting as far as, based on the topology of the site, it is the expectation that any stormwater flow would in part run towards the eastern side of the lot, where there is a little bit of a swale, I believe, existing, plus the proposed stormwater plan will mitigate any potential, or the stormwater pond rather would mitigate any runoff that may occur or may flow to the western side of the lot as well. So overall, there's no concerns with regards to the existing wetlands on the west side.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no further questions, I am now going to declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, signify by raising your virtual hand, waving on the screen, or unmuting yourself and identifying yourself. Public hearing remains open. And we have Alder Jennings.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Am I able to ask a question?
You can, but we won't answer it until after the public hearing. So if you'd like to ask a question, it might be best to wait till after the public hearing.
Okay.
Public hearing remains open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. Going extra slow because I have to go through multiple screens to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. And Alder Jennings, I give you the floor. You can ask your question.
Yes, thank you. On the fire department, on the live burns, I'm curious what you're burning. When I was in the fire service, we were burning furniture and pretty toxic materials because this is close to neighborhoods. I'm just wondering what you burn when you do live burn, and if
Training Officer Howard, can you answer that question, please?
Absolutely. So the majority of the time, NFPA 1403 identifies what we can and cannot burn for live fire evolutions. So anytime would be doing a live fire evolution, such as a live burn, we generally only use clean straw and some straw and generally pallets for the most part. Occasionally, if we'll do like some sort of a public service announcement, if anybody saw our Christmas tree tutorial online, occasionally we'll do a mock room type thing with room furniture and that sort of stuff, but we don't use furniture all that often. There will also be a arson investigators course that will be run in the spring, the first ever in the state. Is going to be in Stevens Point. Occasionally they will use furniture and some other things to burn as well, because that way the arson investigators can basically see where the fire starts. They can trace it back like it would be a real fire room and learn how to trace it back to the origin and cause. Yeah, Alder Jennings, for the most part, we try to burn the clean pallets. But again, occasionally we will burn some other things. But
thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Commissioner Ernst here.
Yes.
I had a question about the public notice that might be appropriate prior to such activities, either burning or nighttime activities or things. Are the neighbors going to be given a heads up for it? I don't know if they should or should not, but I'm just curious about that.
Mr. Howard, you have an answer for that one?
I guess that was not our intention, to notify the public anytime we would be going down there to train. We've done a handful of trainings here over the last 2 years. The majority of the time, nobody even knows we're there. On occasion, we will do some burning down there, plan to do some burning down there. But the majority of our trainings will be in there doing some things like throwing ladders, stretching hose lines. Nobody truly will really know we're in there with the number of trucks that run in and out of there already. No, we don't anticipate, we don't have an EVOT course down there. We don't plan on running our lights or sirens or anything along those lines. The majority of our training occurs during normal business hours. I will say, with the agreement between us and Mid-State, occasionally I'm sure they will want to run a nighttime class, and also with our Metro agreement between Plover and Hull, we will occasionally train on nights and weekends due to those departments having volunteers, and the majority of them work full-time jobs. So to be able to train with our cohorts, we will need to do some night and weekend training, but the majority of our training will be during regular business hours when the majority of folks are at work, I would venture to guess anyways.
Thank you very much. And I'll supplement that by saying that anytime there is any operation going on at the fire department currently and going forward, they make sure and notify the communications center, so dispatch is aware of it. And if there is some sort of larger event, I'm quite sure that we would post something to avoid a plethora of calls coming into 911. One important thing to remember too, Commissioner, is that we don't want people coming in or trying to become spectators for these training events either. It can be a dangerous situation, and at the very least a distraction for those firefighter paramedics that are trying to get training done. So it's not the sort of thing that we'd really want to advertise to try and avoid those spectators trying to gain access. But of course, the safety for the neighborhood is of the utmost concern. And if there was anything significant happening, I'm quite sure that there would be some sort of public notice given.
Just to follow up,
Yes.
It's that after hours things that I was wondering about. things happening, in the evening, at night, at weekends, something that is maybe somewhat out of the ordinary, somebody might get concerned. Again, I'm tossing it out there. Is that something we'd want to put a condition on, saying that, if you're going to have a house fire after 10 o'clock at night, it should notify the neighbors that there's going to be a house fire type of thing?
Sure. Well, Commissioner, if you were to do something like that, first of all, I would caution against that condition, and leave it up to the responsible firefighters and paramedics to determine if appropriate notice is warranted. But then you would have to define a boundary. When you say neighbors, do you mean adjoining property owners? Do you mean within a quarter-mile radius? That's something to consider, but I have the utmost confidence that should there be any significant event, as I said, the communication center is going to be notified regardless. So if there is concern from any of the neighbors seeing or smelling smoke or something like that, they call 911. The communication center, whose job it is to relay that information, would just notify the caller that there are some training exercises going on.
And Commissioner, I don't like to use absolutes, so I will never say never, but in my 15-year fire service career, I have never been at a training past 10 o'clock in the evening.
Mayor,
Does that answer your question sufficiently, Commissioner?
I'm not sure. Still have some concerns about the public notice. Your comment about the fire department, if they're doing something that may be construed as a concern, that they would take it upon themselves to notify folks and say, we're going to be doing this out there. I don't know that I wouldn't think any type of routine activity would warrant it, but if they're doing something above and beyond, which it sounds like they may be doing on occasion, that may be something that the neighbors might want to be warned about.
Okay. Director Kanofsky, did you have something to add?
I do. Commissioner Arnson, I also have a very similar concern, and I have expressed that a few times. Really the role of the Plan Commission is to protect the surrounding property owners as much as it is of anything else. I do think that adding some type of condition saying if they're going to be working nights or weekends, that they should be providing some type of written notice to the surrounding property owners. A good example is whenever we do public hearing notices, property owners within 200 feet of the property boundary are likely to receive or will receive notice of the public hearing. So, given that there is likely a schedule set by mid-state, given that, trainings don't just occur out of the blue, it may be appropriate to add that as a condition and something that I would actually recommend of the of the commission.
Okay. Commissioner Arnson, did you want to qualify that and set a boundary and maybe add that as a condition?
Yes, but I'm not quite sure how. Again, put some conditions on it. If they're operating under normal hours, I think they're good to go. The 8 to 5 type of thing. But if they're going to be having an evening event, and that may depend on what it is, I don't know just what training they're doing. Not all of it will entail fires and things.
That is correct.
Something so dramatic. So I don't know if everything needs to be notified. Explosions, if you got those happening, that could attract some attention.
With any luck, they won't have any explosions.
Explosions would be bad for us.
All right. Well,
let me suggest this, Commissioner. Just as a suggestion, and feel free to change it however you'd like. Adding a condition that if there are going to be live burn exercises, let's say between 6 p.m. and 8 a.m., that they notify property owners within a 200-foot distance from the property boundary. And I know that the Director Kanofsky's office can give us a mailing list for that. So we could certainly use that as the guideline. If 200 feet isn't enough or too much, by all means, feel free to change that. But then we could do, again, the condition would be for live burn exercises between, say, 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. would have to have that notification.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. The property is west of residential areas, so predominant winds could carry that smoke in that direction. So we may want to, I don't know how big of fires we're talking. And to go with the furniture burning, I don't know if conditions could be added for that. And most of the property doesn't have much for residences within 200 feet. It looks like mostly to the west. Maybe you'd want to extend that to, you know, the other side of the street and the neighbors beyond. Those are my thoughts. I'd leave it up to Ryan and the department to come up with a way to address it.
Okay, Director Karnowski, are you comfortable with that? Because it's the commission's job really to put those conditions on. If you have a recommendation, I think they can consider it right now.
Yeah, my recommendation would be anything burning beyond 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. notify property owners within 200 feet by U.S. mail. That would be my recommendation. That would be Monday through Sunday. And so, you know, outside of those regular, I'll call them quote unquote office hours of the fire department training facility, it would be appropriate to notify the property owners. There is a fair amount of residential property to the south, both higher density, multifamily, and a number of single family as well. And then, of course, to the east, you do have, beyond the Gilfrey Center, the Portage County Healthcare Center, the nursing facility. So, you know, every one of those would receive within 200 feet some type of written notification from the fire department that they would be doing a training beyond 6 p.m. As well.
Thank you. And your office has the ability to provide a mailing list with those properties that would qualify?
That's correct.
Okay. Training Officer Howard, do you see any unreasonable hardship if that were to become a condition?
I don't think so. I just want to make sure everybody knows, you know, we take a lot of things into account when we're going to burn. And one of them being the wind. If the wind is going to be too high, we will not perform our training burn that day. And just, you know, at the distances that these structures or residents are as compared to the training site, you know, the majority of the smoke and we would have to have a straight north wind to really affect the residents to the south, which is the closest. But you know, just so everybody knows, we keep in mind for safety, number one, but also you know, we wouldn't try to burn if we were going to be knew that smoke was going to blow right into a residence or near a residence, or especially, you know, the Portage County Healthcare Center, we know where that's at as well. We go there a fair amount. So, you know, we're cognizant of what we're doing whenever we plan and schedule a live burn, and if the weather doesn't cooperate that day, we cancel. So
thank you. And I've been witness to some of those training exercises and can testify that safety is of course the first priority always when it comes to those training exercises. So I can tell you that we've worked on this project for several years, and it really took a lot of effort on behalf of the fire department, Mid-State Technical College, and others involved to make this a reality. Obviously, we want to make it the best we possibly can. So I think Mr. Arntzen has a valid concern, and on the advice of Director Karnowski, I am going to move approval with the conditions outlined in staff, including an additional condition that if there is a live fire burn between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. any day, that residents within 200 feet of the property are notified by U.S. mail prior to the event happening.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Arntzen. Any other discussion? Just going through my screen again. I don't see anyone else wishing to speak, so then I will call the vote. If you're in favor, you'll vote yes. If you're opposed, you'll vote no, and we'll get a roll call from, well, we don't need a roll call on this. I'm going to do a voice vote. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves. If you're in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, that is passed unanimously. Let's see, next on the agenda is a public hearing and action on a request from Tom Owens representing the Stevens Point Area School District for a conditional use permit to construct a bus garage addition and other improvements consistent with Chapter 23.02 sub 1 sub D sub 3 sub A at 1900 Polk Street. I assume our associate planner, Mr. Kuhn, is going to be briefing us on this one again.
Correct. So just quick give a overview on the requested proposal here. So you can see this proposal is separated into two separate areas. First, the bus garage, and second, the school itself. So for the bus garage, the proposal is to add a roughly 1,000 square foot addition onto the northeast corner of the existing building with lighting and HVAC upgrades in the interior. And then secondly, the applicant has been working with the city fire marshal for several weeks now as far as adding a sprinkler system to the building and making sure that appropriate utility connections are provided for said sprinkler system. Then lastly, there'll be a parking lot resurfacing as well. Now for the school portion, there is proposed to be a new generator located on the southwest corner of the school, which we'll show in the next slide. And again, there will be some HVAC and lighting upgrades, some interior remodeling, and then the parking lot resurfacing as well. And any school upgrades and upgrades to accessory uses of schools are considered a conditional use permit, conditional use rather, thus requiring this conditional use permit. So just a quick give an overview on the more larger scale improvements with this request. So first off, the proposed addition for the bus garage, again, located on the northeast corner, filling in primarily this open area along the intersection of Riverview Avenue and Water Street. Then on the bottom picture, you can see a conceptual view of what the proposed addition will look like relative to the existing building. So you can see that the architectural style will be compatible with what is existing on the bus garage. And then for the proposed generator, like I said, it will be located on the more southwest corner of the lot, just directly north of the parking lot for the school. There'll be fencing surrounded the generator as well, and again on a concrete pad. So again, here's some pictures showing it'll be this kind of rough location here where the proposed addition will be, and then directly north abutting the ADA stalls is where the proposed generator will be located. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the conditional use request, subject to the conditions shown on your screen, that the proposed fencing meet applicable fencing standards for the generator, that access to the proposed fire sprinkler system connection shall occur, and that any appropriate water connections required shall be sought after and approved by the Utilities and Public Works Department, that erosion control and building permits be sought after, and then staff again having the authority to approve minor changes to the site plan.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions before we open up the public hearing from the commissioners? Don't see anything. So now I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, signify that you wish to speak. We will call on you and you can provide that testimony. Is there anyone who wishes to testify on this public hearing?
Yes, please.
Hang on, who was that?
My name's Phil Schobert. I'm a resident on Polk Street.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Schobert.
Well, my question is this. I'm looking over everything. I actually got into the agenda today. I was able to look at it a little further. When we were sent the information a couple of weeks ago about this upcoming meeting, it said because you're an interested party and our property abuts this. The mention was of 1900 Polk. Now that, as far as I know, is the Bliss Center. How is this project going to affect the traffic pattern, which is already congested both in the morning and in the afternoon with the people dropping off and picking up their children from Ben Franklin, along with other traffic on the road?
Are you speaking specifically about the addition to the bus garage?
Well, it's part of that whole package from what I can see.
Well, the
There seems,
generator shouldn't increase traffic at all.
well, is there going to be construction traffic along? I mean, because what it had said was that it was going to be improvements consistent with chapter 23 dot blah, 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 at 1900 Polk Street.
Mhm.
Now, from what I can tell, 1900 is the Bliss Center, is it not?
Adam?
Yeah,
The address?
so 1900 Polk Street is the address for the parcel overall. And again, this was, as I mentioned before, the parcel, this is all one big parcel you have that consists of both the junior high school and the bus garage. So this is just a case where there are separate, this is a unique proposal relatively speaking, in that you have separate requests for the bus garage and the school for separate buildings, separate locations, but still all together within the same parcel. So the address overall is still 1900 Polk Street. And I guess I can quick answer for the, what traffic impact, if any, would it have? And, short answer is that for the construction of the generator, no additional traffic will occur as a result of its placement and continued maintenance and operation.
Okay, so then there won't be, you're not building on an additional garage over here on this side of the school. It's just the generator construction over by the, essentially by the tennis courts.
For the generator, correct. The generator will be located between the tennis courts and the school. The bus garage addition, and I guess I can speak to the bus garage addition as well. That's not expected to result in any accumulated traffic as well, given that A, it's a relatively small addition, roughly 1,000 square feet, and B, the primary purpose of this proposed addition is to add more maintenance space for continued bus garage operations. Because at least with my discussions with the applicant, they make comments that, the workspace within the bus garage is relatively confined. So by the purpose of this proposed addition will be to, in short, open it up and make it a little bit more open for the workers who work in the building. So overall, there won't be any expected traffic increases at all.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't concerned so much about the bus garage part. It was more of just the physical address, and if that was going to impact our area here. So that was what I was mostly.
Mr. Schobert, could I have your address again, please?
300 Polk Street.
300
I'm right on the corner in Water.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And normally, sir, we wouldn't during a public hearing, we wouldn't answer questions, but it was important to clarify that, I think, and I hope that we answered your question for you.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, the public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And for the third time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
This is Cooper. I would move approval of the request as presented with the staff recommended conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Rice seconds.
Rice seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves. And if you are in favor of this motion, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that is approved. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Don Scafidi representing Regent Street Apartments LLC to amend the City of Stevens Point Comprehensive Plan future land use map for the purposes of amending the future land use designation from residential to commercial / office / multifamily at 3707 Stanley Street with the parcel identified in your agenda. Adam?
Yeah, so to give a quick background on this request, so the applicant has designated the subject property here as part of a potential future expansion for the neighboring car dealership. Now, while the proposed use for this subject property relative to the car dealership is not 100% finalized, the likelihood, as indicated in the applicant's application, is to utilize this for parking and showcase areas. Now, should the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning requests be approved, now it is the applicant's intent to combine this property with 3733 Stanley Street, which is the dealership. And the plans are is at some point in the future, the existing fencing surrounding the two property lines and the house on the subject property as well will be demolished. And again, the timeline for that is to be determined. So the city's comprehensive plan, future land use map does identify the subject property for residential use, and it's currently zoned for R2 single family residential use. So here you can see on the parcel, the subject property highlighted in blue. This is the dealership located on the east side of it. So the middle picture you can see is the existing home and then the fencing abutting the two properties. So just again, a quick overview, at least from the future land use component of it. There's two primary reasons why staff would be in support of this. And the first of which is to create more of a compatible land use configuration for this area, and that the future land use and the zoning of a specific property are both matching if it's residential and residential, commercial and commercial, etc. And the second reason is that the comprehensive plan does denote this general region, Stanley Street, in part, given the roadway configuration, given the existing properties, existing uses on that street for commercial use. It does designate this area for, economic development purposes, for a broader commercial use for the area, which by requesting this future land use amendment would satisfy that request as well. So overall, staff does recommend the approval for changing the future land use designation of the subject property from residential to commercial office / multifamily.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners before we open the public hearing?
Mayor, I have a quick question. Alder Kneebone here.
Yes.
They've expanded a lot at Scafidi, and that's really good for Scafidi and for the city, but they keep taking down trees. Will they come back with a site plan review to do what they're going to do there? So we have I'm concerned. There's some really nice wooded areas back in there, and I know they took down a bunch of trees when they expanded the body shop. It just seems like we're losing an awful lot of trees over there. Hopefully they would replace some of that. Could we make that I don't know.
Yes.
That's a concern.
So I guess first off, the short answer is it will depend on what the proposed use will be for the subject property, as far as if a conditional use permit would be needed. I would note for the collision center, conditional use was needed, not so much for the proposed use, but more so because this property is located within the wellhead protection area. So again, depending on the use, a conditional use permit may be needed, but just conceptually speaking, given that on the southern portion of the property, it does abut residences, multifamily residences, the proposed duplexes along Doolittle, single family on the western side of the property, that would be something that staff would be in support to create a more natural buffer between the commercial automotive dealership use and the neighboring residential uses.
Thank you, Adam. And I don't know if the applicant is on the meeting tonight. However, it would certainly be appropriate for you to relay the alderperson's concerns to the applicant, regardless of what they choose to do with the property in the future. Any other questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing open. If you have testimony on this request, signify such, and I will try and call on you. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one else wishing to testify, I'll declare the public hearing closed and bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Commissioner Happy, I would move approval with staff recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second Mayor Alder Kneebone.
Seconded by Kneebone. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 6 on our agenda is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Don Scafidi, representing Regent Street Apartments LLC, to rezone 3707 Stanley Street with the parcel identified from R2 single family residential to B4 commercial. Mr. Kuhn?
Yeah, so nothing much more to say here. You know, the performance standards are met subject to the B4 commercial district, and the Stanley Street Highway 66 corridor is built large enough to handle any increase of traffic flow for this proposed commercial use. And then the bottom portion of the screen, you can see the neighboring zoning classifications for properties, the use and future land use designation that, as I said before, would create more of a compatible use configuration between the zoning district and the future land use of neighboring lots.
Thank you. And I think we've had the opportunity to hear about it, and the commissioners, if you need to, jump in, but I'm going to declare the public hearing open right away. Declaring the public hearing open. If anyone has testimony on this request.
If I may, Alderperson Leake here.
Alder Leake, yes.
This is concerning the same, I'm a little confused about this second request. This is the same property as before, and this is, but it's from, it's from Scafidi, but it's an apartment company, a rental company that owns the single house on that property.
I believe that, yes, I believe that
Okay.
the current use is being rented.
Okay. So the apartment company owned by Scafidi owns that single family house.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Great. Do we know if there's going to, maybe returning to Alder Kneebone?
Well, Alder Leake,
Oh,
let me stop you there,
yeah.
because again, we're in the middle of a public hearing. This
Okay.
is really just designed to take testimony. I will allow for questions after the public hearing is closed, if that's all right with you. Thank you. Public hearing is still open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed, and I will turn the floor over to Alderperson Leake for your questions.
Oh, I was, maybe one concern I would have about that is that I did used to live in those apartments when I first moved to Point, in those apartments on Doolittle. Not all of them, just one. But and I did appreciate actually that there were some trees between me and the dealership. Not that I mind looking at cars, but I like the trees too. So yeah, I guess I would like to voice my add my concern to Alder Kneebone's about the trees.
Understood, and we will definitely relay that to the applicant.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
If I could just address a few things.
Absolutely, Director.
So what's before you tonight is just a zoning change and a comprehensive land use change. Anything that would come with the future development or the future change of use of the property, including a site plan review or any of the conditional uses, will come back through this body. And that's where we can really dive into the ins and outs of site planning, including adding natural buffers, things of that nature. And that will be taken into consideration as we move forward. If they were to do, say, an expansion upon the parking lot in which the vehicles sit, they would have to meet the city's, landscaping code when it comes to parking lots, which over the last several years has gotten much more restrictive, including additional green space. And so we would be able to address it at that time. Addressing it here in this current situation, while important, is not necessarily appropriate.
Understood. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, commissioners, I would entertain a motion.
Alder Nebo, I'll move to approve with staff recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Arnson will.
Second by Artson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 7 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from the city of Stevens Point to amend chapter 23, the zoning ordinance, the revised municipal code of the city of Stevens Point. The request adds section 23.01 sub 14 relating to fencing guidelines that are sought to be transferred from chapter 30 of the building code to chapter 23 of the zoning code. Director Konoski, are you going to take this one or hand it to Adam again?
I can take it. So essentially what's going on right now is we are currently in the process of rewriting chapter 30, which is our building code. We actually have to, as part of our state delegation for doing permit review and plan review. Through that process, we've noticed that it really doesn't make sense that fencing and driveway regulations are within the building code. That's really more of a land use item and should be addressed within the city zoning code. So essentially what we've done is taken the same language verbatim from chapter 30, put it into chapter 23, which is the city zoning code. Because we're making an amendment, we are required to hold a public hearing on that change. The section 14 will be added within the general standards of the zoning code. So that's the overview.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request is urged to step forward now. The public hearing remains open. For the third and last time, the public hearing is open. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed and move it back to the commission for consideration. Commissioners, thoughts?
Alder Nebo here again because zoning is so sexy. I'll move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Hoppy will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoppy. And that doesn't necessarily mean you concur with Alderperson Nebo's assessment.
Sure.
Any comments or discussion regarding the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Here we go. Let's see. Next one, item number 8 is a request from Lineage Logistics LLC for a conditional use permit to allow meat packing to occur at the premise of 5700 EM Cops Drive with the parcel identified. Either Director Konoski or Associate Planner Kuhn.
Sure.
I guess I'll preface this real quick. This was a mistake that your own community development director made by not interpreting the zoning code correctly. That's why this is back before you as part of a conditional use. This body may recall that we have already done the site plan review approval for this a few months ago. So my apologies to both the applicant and to the commission.
Noted. And it'll be there's a black mark on someone's permanent record somewhere, right? Adam, do you have anything to add to this?
Nothing really more. I believe the applicant is here in case there's any questions for any commissioners or any members of the public may have too.
I believe so as well. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak? This is not a public hearing. Scrolling through just to make sure.
Commissioner Hoppy, just to clarify, I mean, I know we dealt with this. This was the plan for this part anyway, right? It was just kind of a
Yes.
clarification. I mean, oh, sorry, I
It was
remember.
just a piece of red tape that got overlooked.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, I just was double checking, but.
Okay, commissioners, since there was no discussion or comments, and really this is, as I said, this is just a piece of red tape that inadvertently got overlooked. Ultimately my responsibility, so I'll take some pressure off of Director Konoski. I will move approval.
Mayor, this is a public hearing.
I didn't see the public hearing. Hang on. No. It's not listed as a public hearing, Director. Item number 8.
It was published in the paper as a public hearing, if I'm not
It was
mistaken.
published in the paper. Okay, so it's just a typo on the agenda.
That's correct. Yes.
Again, just for clarification, Director, it was published correctly as a public hearing. Is that correct?
I believe so. Let me double check. One moment.
We're going to pause for station identification. No, we want to make sure we do this correct. So if it was published as a public hearing, we are okay to proceed as a public hearing. If not, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to republish and bring it back.
Mayor, it was published as item number 2 as a public hearing in action it was published on the February 19th and February 26th as a public hearing.
Perfect.
It's just mislabeled on the agenda.
All right, so it's just a typo on the agenda. It was correctly listed and published as a public hearing, so therefore I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to testify on this request, somehow get my attention, raise your virtual hand. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Okay, seeing no one wishing to testify, I will declare the public hearing closed. Thank you, Director Konoski, for catching that before we went too far. And at this point, I will move approval.
This is Cooper. I would second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Any further discussion from the commissioners?
Mayor, I have a quick question. I believe we talked about this last month as well, but the things coming in to be processed will come in frozen and go out frozen. There's not going to be aromas of the industry wafting through the neighborhoods. I believe that's what we learned last month.
Yeah, as I think our training officer, Mr. Howard, had mentioned, I'm not for absolutes. There may be some type of aroma, but yeah, the intention is to not have any raw or thawed product coming through the facility.
Bacon's never a bad aroma to have, but you just never know.
That's true too. Any other questions? Okay. The motion is to approve. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves, and if you're in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, that passes unanimously. Item number 9 is a request from Jim Anderson for a conceptual subdivision plat review of a proposed 31-lot subdivision to be located at 5498 Gala Road. Now, before I go too much further, and this isn't meant to be anything but a question, Director, this is not a public hearing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I know there was some written testimony that was submitted, and that will be submitted to the Community Development Office, and it will be available if anyone member of the public wishes to review that written testimony. They can contact Director Konoski's office. Director, I will turn the floor back over to you so you can give us an overview of Mr. Anderson's proposal.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight is a conceptual review of a 31 lot subdivision currently located within the town of Hull, north of Gala Road and west of Burlowski Road. The lots that are on your screen right now would be serviced off of a proposed Forest Creek Road and Gala Road. And there's 2 lots on the south end that would be serviced off of Regent Street. This is within the town of Hull, and so in order for it to be a city subdivision, there would have to be some type of annexation, which is an important item to note here as well. The vacant parcel south of Gala Road and the rural subdivision south of Regent Street would remain in the town of Hull. The area north of the proposed Forest Creek Road would also remain in the town of Hull, but the next acreage north of that is actually a subdivision within the city of Stevens Point that it's considered a rural subdivision in which there's no city sewer and water extending to that area. The developer did propose 31 total lots that vary in size from 0.66 acres to 1.41 acres. Along the north boundary of the property is Lost Creek, and so the developer would keep that as a natural area. In a typical subdivision development, urban planners would like to see some what I'll call road extensions north of Forest Creek, but given the natural green corridor with Lost Creek, it's important that we don't provide any additional roadways or any additional access points, just in an attempt to keep the Lost Creek as natural as possible. So before you tonight is just going to be a conceptual review. It's important for the commission to provide their comments now before the applicant goes any further. Preliminary and final plating becomes very expensive, and so having this initial review is important. Things that the commission could speak to would be the subdivision design and layout. You could also speak to the density and general areas like that. I will add that this property, Adam, if you could go to the next slide. One more for me. Does fall within Wellhead Protection District B. I know that the council has historically, or in the last few years, opposed any type of suburban sprawl. In most cases, city staff agrees. However, given that this proposed subdivision falls within Wellhead Protection District B and the importance it has not only in the city's municipal wellheads, but also the village of Whiting and the village of Plover's municipal wellheads, it's important that we stop having a concentration of well and septic systems within this wellhead protection area, which is why staff is more supportive of having this subdivision be a municipal city subdivision as opposed to a town of Hull subdivision, which would require minimum 2-acre lots. That was implemented in the early 90s. Because of the current town of Hull jurisdiction, there would be required annexation, which would pick up on the north side of Burlowski, south of Regent Street, up and grab into this property. There would be some concern about what's called shoestring annexation, which has historically not been well received by the Department of Administration or the state of Wisconsin Supreme Court. However, in conversations with the Department of Administration and explaining to them the wellhead protection concerns that the city has, coupled with the fact that we have a municipal subdivision on the north side of this property, not of this specific property, but the property to the north, they seem to be much more receptive to allowing this annexation. Adam, go to the previous slide, please. So this is just a real general concept. The areas that are in red, where it says future utility service, are possible future discussions of annexation and providing of utility services. Most of these homes are on 1/2 acre to 3/4 acre, are within the town of Hull and have their own private well and septic system. Again, as we try to get these properties that were developed pre-1993, where the 2-acre minimum county zoning was implemented, out of having a concentration of well and septic systems, providing those future utility services is going to be critical for the protection of the municipal wellheads that we often rely on. And then the area that says blue, that says future utility service, that would be an extension for providing that rural subdivision that's within the city of Stevens Point future utility services. As we talk about other future residential development, this property is probably one of the first ones that has to go in order for us to develop any further east, mainly because of the utility service issues that are in this area. The city does not have a boundary agreement with the town of Hull, although I'm hopeful that in the future we can have legitimate conversations on boundary agreements, because this is unfortunately a rather uncomfortable conversation without a boundary agreement in place. So again, staff is just providing the 30,000-foot overview of this proposed development. This is a time for the Plan Commission to provide any additional information to the developer. I do know the developer is not currently on the call, but a representative is that could answer any questions. But this is the first step towards a preliminary and final plat approval, and more than happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Commissioner Aronson has a question. It's not clear to me just how far, where do the existing city utilities extend?
The existing utilities are, I'm trying to find if we have a better map here.
Right.
They're south of Regent Street. Adam, if you go to the next slide. They're south of Regent Street, actually right at where Sandpiper Drive and Burlowski meet. That's where the current utilities end. And so there would be an extension up, and we would make the developer, or the city would provide the utilities on the north side of the property boundary so that future subdivisions would have direct access to it.
All right. I guess my concern is that, this is something we touched on a little bit with the town of Hull and their expansion plans on a different area, and the cost of those utilities running it up there. So it sounds to me like the developer would be responsible for any costs of extending city utilities up to serve that subdivision.
It really depends. In some cases, a developer would be responsible for that. If there are greater interests that the city may have, like extending utilities up to provide future service to existing city subdivisions or future city subdivisions, the city may take that cost on and look at the possibility of doing a deferred special assessment to those property owners that are adjacent to the utility. But that conversation is still happening internally, and we are still looking at the overall cost to run utilities up Burlowski and what that impact would look like on the property owners within the town of Hull. The developer would be responsible, if we went that route, the developer would be responsible for the installation of utilities within their own development, however.
Right. Because there is some value to, as the director mentioned earlier, there's value to the city to not have that concentration of wells and septic primarily. So there is some value there, but as he said, we are still working through that. And Alder Shore, I see your hand up, but I'm going to wait till Commissioner Aronson is completed.
Yeah, let me just finish up a little bit. Again, I see some similarities to the previous town of Hull ruling, and I support the idea of sewered subdivisions as opposed to putting unsewered subdivisions in there. Especially in light of the wellhead protection. The cost thing became quite an issue. And I saw on one of the maps here that maybe there are designs to hooking up portions of the town of Hull, currently residential, to municipal sewer and water. That has presented problems in the past also. I think there's a lot going on here that I'm not against, but I see complications. So I'm just throwing that out there, see what others think. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Shore.
Thank you, Mayor. My questions and concerns are probably very similar to Commissioner Arnson's, and I'll be direct about them. I will want to see the math on this such that, in addition to the water and sewer utility, I see that there's going to be a new street, right? So I am going to be less interested in assuming significant liabilities, and more interested in being above water in terms of responsibility for the infrastructure relative to the tax base.
Absolutely, Alderperson. As you know, we've had this talk multiple times. Any new expansion needs to pay for itself in perpetuity. Those infrastructure needs need to be sustained by whatever development or project that happens to be. And we're not there yet, but I know that the director is well aware of that, and will continue that on through our talks.
Thanks.
As this progresses. Any other comments?
Mayor, I have a question.
Alder Nebone.
I'm concerned about the lot size. I mean, it seems to me it would be nice if it was a little bit more of a mixed use instead of all single family. Why not some of these 0 lot line condos on Woodland and Sandpiper, that like the one I live in? 3/4 of an acre, those are really big lots. And I know you can't really dictate how somebody's going to develop their property, but if we could encourage a little bit more, maybe of something that might be a little more affordable than an acre lot and probably a very expensive home, although it helps the tax base, that's for sure. So that would be a concern I have, is the lack of housing density. If that could be squeezed a little bit more, maybe, but.
Understood, Alderperson. And as you know, through our housing study, there is a diverse range of housing needs in the community. This fills one of those needs. It's not filling the need for smaller, denser neighborhoods, but this is yet another need. So we've got several hands up now. I'm going to go to them in, I believe, the order, and that is going to Alderperson Morrow first.
Thank you very much. I think this is just great because there's no other places to really build a home. Here in our city, we have a lot of condos that are going up. We have a lot of mixed use, and I think this is a great fit for what we need. Because right now, if someone wants to end up trying to build a home, they go to Hull, they end up going to Plover. I mean, and for us to be able to offer this, that's going to have sewer and water. I think that would just be a great fit for us, because that's something I think that we really need here. Because outside of where I live in Falcons Cove and Moses Creek, there really aren't any places that someone could end up putting up their own house that has sewer and water. Now you have to end up going to Hull, and you have to go, and you don't have sewer and water. So that just kind of creates more of a mess that we're already in. And this will also help protect the wellhead as well. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Jennings is next.
Yeah, I guess I strongly disagree with Alder Morrow's comments. This type of cookie cutter development is a blueprint for how cities make themselves poor and how developers make themselves quite rich. The city needs to focus on development that pays for itself, builds wealth, and is sustainable. This kind of design is the total opposite of that. Also, this is the way the city makes an enemy of its neighbors. And I don't know why we're stepping into something that's going to make greater enemy with our neighbors in Hull. So thank you.
Thank you. President Johnson.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am agreeing first with what Alder Jennings just said. And then as to your comment, and I support your comment that we need to make sure that these developments pay for themselves. I want to make sure that we're looking out in a long enough time horizon of what we mean by what does it pay for itself, because this infrastructure is actually not an asset for the community. It's a liability. It's a long-term liability. As you well know, Mr. Mayor, we've got a great plan for replacing our roads right now that has been reduced from once every, what, a million years to like once every 80 years. But we need to be careful about this kind of thing. And I do believe there are opportunities to build homes in the city of Stevens Point, in our urban core and other areas. Not everybody wants a 3/4 acre lot. Not everybody wants a $300,000 home. And so I think there's plenty of opportunities within Stevens Point without any additional sprawl, without serious consideration for those long-term liabilities that I won't be paying for because I'll be long gone. But those people, my daughter, my granddaughter, hopefully my grandson at some point when he's back in the United States, will be paying for, because those roads and sewer systems will need to be maintained. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. And that's exactly why I said in perpetuity, because, you know, paying for itself for 50 years doesn't cut it. And we know that from past experience. I know that there are some representatives from the town of Hull on the meeting, and I know we had talked on several occasions in regards to a boundary agreement. However, they just never seem to come to fruition. I'm looking forward to working with incoming Chairman Wills to see if we can move those boundary agreements along. But I know that there was some talk about making enemies of our neighbors representing Hull. Several of you are on here. Do you have any comments or thoughts on this? I certainly don't want to make enemies of any of you. Okay, and any other comments? Okay, Director, I think that's it. If anyone, has a comment that pops into your head later, by all means, send it to our Community Development Department to take those into consideration. And certainly tonight is not the last time we're going to be talking about this potential development. We've got a long ways to go yet.
Yeah, so let me just so I can relay information quickly to the developer.
Okay.
Of course, we need to look at density. It needs to be a major factor, and value per acre needs to be taken into consideration. And that's what I'm hearing, at least from the alders, not necessarily from the commission. But ensuring that the development pays for itself over time through property taxes. And so we can definitely run those numbers as well. But also do a little reverse engineering to make sure that we can get the density that's required to make it work.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, let's see. Our next item is item number 10, and that is discussion and possible action on a request from the city of Stevens Point for acquisition of 1700 Strongs Avenue with the parcel identified. Director, are you going to take this one?
Yes. Before you tonight is a request from the city staff and the redevelopment authority for acquisition of 1700 Strongs Avenue. This is the former dance studio, former church on the corner of Strongs and Browley. And so what the redevelopment authority is in the process of doing is acquiring it from the county to essentially issue a request for proposal to anyone who has an interest in redeveloping the property. We've got a few groups that are interested in a number of various projects, but in order for us to do this, as the commission knows, the first step is the Plan Commission needs to approve the acquisition of the property itself. Next slide, please, Adam. Lucky enough to get in the church a few days ago. The woodwork is still in pretty exceptional shape. I've been in a lot of abandoned properties, and I was nothing short of impressed with the state of the interior of the church is in. So I just snapped a few photos. There is existing tin roof. It's been painted over, but there's tin roof, tin ceilings up. My apologies. Wood's in very good shape. The overall structure seems to be in good enough shape where we could find some other use for it other than sitting abandoned. If you look at the existing zoning of the property, it's R3 single and 2 family residential. It does about multiple family 1 and 2 residential, mainly on the north side of the property. Part of the issue that we ran into when going through this was the church was on one parcel, the parking lot that the church utilized was on another parcel. They were both in almost separate foreclosure actions and tax deed actions, but the county was kind enough to combine them into one lot. And so it does make for a more developable parcel in general. It should be noted the city's comprehensive future land use plan does designate this area as residential. However, it is right on the border of professional office and multifamily. So depending on what the city ends up getting for proposals, we may do a amendment to the comp plan and of course to the zoning code as well. So staff would recommend approval of the acquisition, just so we can get this moving forward. And the county wants to get the property transferred. The redevelopment authority wants to get ownership of the property. This is the first step.
Thank you. And as the director mentioned, we do have a couple of groups that are interested in varying uses. Our goal from a city perspective is to be made whole financially and to get the property back on the tax roll. So I too would recommend approval of the city purchasing this property from the county and and then pursuing the RFP to make us whole. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts?
I have a comment, Mayor.
Yes.
We discussed this at Redevelopment Authority, and the feeling is that if the city purchases the property, we can control what goes there, and the city can make sure that it fits with the neighborhood. So I think it'll be real easy for the city to recover the costs, and otherwise it goes to tax foreclosure and anybody could get it for any reason. And this way the city can control its destiny. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. And just to be clear, it's already gone through tax foreclosure. The county does have it. We have the opportunity because there's a special assessment on it. Kind of a first right of refusal, but not technically. There's a statute in there that allows us to do this. But like I said, we've got at least 3 interested parties. So the intent would be to put out a request for proposal over the next month or so and get something conducive to the neighborhood put back in there. Thoughts, comments, or a motion?
I'll move to approve the purchase.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Happy will second. I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Commissioners, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is approved. Director Karnowski and I have a meeting with the County Space and Properties tomorrow to give them an update on that. So I thank you for that. And then next on the agenda is item number 11, which is the January 2021 monthly report. Those numbers are way too small to see.
We are staying consistent with 2020 within 10 years of 10 permits within as compared to last year. Valuation is up mainly because of the Marshall Clinic electrical permit being issued at $3 million. We are starting to enter the city's quote unquote busy season. So I would suspect the February and March reports are going to indicate that we're up on permits. Although a lot of that is going to be based on existing home and not necessarily that of new construction, which is okay because that continues to signify people are investing in their own homes as opposed to new construction. So would recommend approval as presented.
Thank you. If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to accept the report and place it on file.
This is Cooper, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second Mayor Alder Kneebone.
Seconded by Kneebone. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is now on file. And next up is the director's report. Director Karnowski.
You've got a pretty extensive director's report within the agenda packet itself. Just a few items to touch base on. The convent development, or what's kind of being known as the Grove development, we got some promising news. WIDA announced that they recalculated their distribution for this coming cycle, which we're a part of, and they are likely to award allocation for 70% of the applications, which puts us, I believe, in really good footing for a possible awarding of the tax credits. Historically, it's between 40 and 50% of the applications are awarded. A few other special projects, TIF 11, 12, and 13 have all been formally approved by the state of Wisconsin, so those are established as of 1/1/21. City continues to work on the strategic planning process. We're hopeful to have a draft document in front of the council in the coming weeks, actually, as we start to narrow down what the strategic planning document should look like. We are currently working on the housing task force as outlined by the city council. We have a great intern from UWSP who's been a great help in putting this task force together so we can take a look at what the housing needs of the community are from now and into the future. One final update, the city has hired the Edgewater Manor relocation coordinator, Michelle Helmick, started last week Wednesday, and has been officing out of Edgewater Manor, and has already met a number of the residents and will begin to provide assistance to those looking to relocate over the next 18 to 24 months into other housing. So that's all I have. More than happy to answer any of the questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Director. And I'm very excited to have Michelle part of our team hit the ground running. We just got to work on getting her some wireless internet access over there. Any questions from either the commissioners or any of the attendees regarding the director's report? Okay, thank you again, Director, and your team for another successful month. No need to make a motion to approve this here. That's just a report. So with that, our agenda is exhausted and we are adjourned at 7:23. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.